Tae-woo wiped down the metal counter in the station mess hall for the third time that evening. The kitchen was finally quiet after feeding 200 people from 20 different species. His shoulders ached, but it was a good ache. The kind that came from honest work. He grabbed his small camping stove from his locker and tucked it under his arm. Commander Hyun-jin would be angry if she knew he still used it. Open flames were against station rules. But Tae-woo had carried this stove since his military days. It had cooked his meals in trenches and on transport ships. He was not giving it up now. The cargo bay was empty this late. Perfect. Tae-woo found his usual corner behind some supply crates and set up the stove. He pulled out a small piece of meat from his pocket. Not much, but enough. The blue flame came to life with a soft whoosh. He smiled. Some sounds never got old. The meat hit the hot pan with a satisfying sizzle. Tae-woo breathed in the smell. Real cooking. Not the reconstituted protein paste from the mess hall machines. Not the nutrition bars that tasted like cardboard. Real meat turning brown at the edges, releasing its juices. A sound made him freeze. A soft clicking noise. Then another. Coming from the shadows near the air vent. 3 pairs of eyes reflected the firelight. Large eyes. Violet-colored. Tae-woo's heart jumped into his throat. He knew those eyes. Relnari. The cubs stepped into the light and Tae-woo forced himself to stay still. They were small for their species. Maybe waist-high to him, but their claws were already as long as his fingers. Their teeth caught the firelight when they opened their mouths to taste the air. Everyone on the station knew about the 3 cubs. War orphans from the conflict in the outer reaches. They had arrived 2 weeks ago and nobody knew what to do with them. Vrelnari were predators, the most dangerous species in known space. Even their children were feared. The cubs were supposed to be locked in a secure area. Someone had messed up. The largest cub moved closer. Female, Tae-woo thought. Based on the silver markings along her spine, she tilted her head, watching the meat cook. Her nostrils flared. Tae-woo should run. He should hit the emergency alarm. He should do anything except sit here cooking meat while 3 predator cubs stalked toward him. But he did not move. Something in their eyes stopped him. They were not looking at him like prey. They were looking at the fire, at the cooking meat. Their heads lowered, ears back. The body language of creatures who were afraid but could not look away. Tae-woo slowly turned the meat in the pan. The sizzling got louder. All 3 cubs flinched at the sound. The smallest one, with unusual golden eyes, made a soft whining noise. They were starving. Tae-woo could see it now. Their ribs showed through their fur. Their movements were too slow, too careful. The medical staff had been complaining that the cubs refused to eat. They left every meal untouched, even fresh meat. Tae-woo made a decision that was probably stupid. He cut a small piece from the cooked meat and placed it on the floor between them. Then he went back to cooking his own portion. The cubs did not move toward the meat. They stared at it, then at the fire, then at Tae-woo, waiting. Understanding hit him. They were not going to eat unless he did first. Tae-woo finished cooking and sat down on the floor cross-legged next to his stove. He cut a piece of meat and ate it slowly. The cubs watched every movement. He cut another piece and ate that too. The silver-marked female moved first. She crept forward, belly low to the ground until she reached the piece of meat. She sniffed it, licked it. Then finally she ate. The other 2 followed. The male cub with darker fur tested everything with his claws first before eating. The small golden-eyed one grabbed the meat and scurried back to the shadows to eat it there. Tae-woo cooked more meat. The cubs came closer each time he offered a piece. By the 4th piece, the silver-marked female was sitting within arm's reach. Her eyes never left the flame. She made a chirping sound and reached one paw toward the fire. Tae-woo gently pushed her paw away from the flame. She pulled back, startled, but then reached out again. Testing. Learning. The male cub suddenly pressed against Tae-woo's side, just leaned his whole weight there, purring deep in his chest. The small one crept closer too, sitting on Tae-woo's other side. This was insane. Tae-woo was sitting on a cargo bay floor with 3 Vrelnari cubs pressed against him, sharing his fire and his food. If anyone saw this, he would be locked up for his own safety. But the cubs were finally eating. Their purring filled the quiet space. The silver-marked female rested her chin on his knee, watching the flame dance. The alarm came 20 minutes later. Red lights flashed. A voice over the speaker announced that 3 Vrelnari subjects had escaped containment. All personnel were to evacuate to safe zones. The cubs tensed. The male bared his teeth at the noise. But they did not run. They pressed closer to Taewoo and the warm stove. Heavy boots pounded on metal floors. The security team burst into the cargo bay, weapons ready. They froze when they saw the scene. Taewoo sat perfectly still with 3 deadly predators curled around him like oversized cats. The camping stove flickered between them. The smell of cooked meat hung in the air. Commander Hyunjin pushed through the security team. She stared at Taewoo with an expression he could not read. Anger? Shock? Fear? A young woman in a lab coat squeezed past the commander. Ji-won, the station's xenobiologist, Taewoo's only real friend on Aurora 7, her eyes went wide. Do not move, she whispered. Nobody move. The silver-marked cub raised her head and looked at the humans with their weapons. She growled softly. The other 2 cubs stood up, placing themselves between Taewoo and the security team. Protecting him. Lower your weapons, Commander Hyunjin ordered. Slowly, the security team obeyed. The cubs relaxed slightly but did not move away from Taewoo. Ji-won stepped forward carefully. Taewoo, what did you do? I shared my dinner, he said simply. Ji-won laughed. It came out high-pitched and slightly hysterical. You shared your dinner? With Vrelnari cubs, using an open flame. They were hungry, Taewoo said. The small golden-eyed cub chirped and sat down next to Taewoo again. It looked at the security team, then at Taewoo, then deliberately turned its back on the armed humans, trusting him to keep it safe. Commander Hyunjin rubbed her face. This is going to be a problem. Why? Ji-won asked, still staring at the scene with wonder. Because their mother is coming, the commander said. Matriarch Shar. She will be here in 5 days. The name meant nothing to Taewoo. But Ji-won went pale. The war leader? Ji-won whispered. That Matriarch Shar? Commander Hyunjin nodded. The silver-marked cub yawned, showing all her teeth, and curled up next to Taewoo's leg. The male cub did the same on his other side. The small one climbed onto his lap like a house cat, purring. Taewoo looked down at the 3 cubs sleeping against him, peaceful for the first time since they arrived. He thought about a war leader mother coming to find her children bonded to a human stranger. He was probably going to die. But right now, 3 starving children were finally sleeping with full bellies. That seemed more important. We should let them sleep, he said quietly. Nobody argued with him. 3 days passed. Taewoo had cooked 17 meals for the cubs. They would not eat unless he sat with them and lit his camping stove. The station medical team was amazed. The cubs were gaining weight. Their fur was shinier. They even played, sometimes wrestling in the converted storage room that had become their new home. But they still refused to let Taewoo leave for long. Ji-won visited every morning with her tablet full of notes. This is incredible, she said, watching the silver-marked cub lean against Taewoo while he cooked breakfast. No human has ever been this close to a Vrelnari without getting hurt. They are just children, Taewoo replied, flipping meat in his pan. Scared children who needed food. Ji-won shook her head. It is more than that. I found something in the old records, ancient Vrelnari texts. There are legends about beings called flame-bringers. Taewoo looked up. The golden-eyed cub, the smallest one, was trying to climb onto his shoulder. He gently moved the cub to the floor. Flame-bringers? He asked. Creatures from Vrelnari mythology. They say the flame-bringers visited their ancestors thousands of years ago, taught them about controlled fire, about cooking meat. Ji-won leaned forward. The descriptions match humans perfectly. 2 legs, 5 fingers, soft skin, and they used fire to prepare food. Taewoo frowned. That is impossible. Humans never met Vrelnari until 50 years ago. I know. But the cubs react to you like you are something from their racial memory. Something important. Ji-won scrolled through her tablet. Listen to this translation. When the stars grow cold and our children cry in darkness, the flame bringers shall return. They will sit with us, share their fire, and we shall know peace. The male cub chirped and pressed his nose against Taewoo's hand. Taewoo scratched behind the cub's ears without thinking. The cub purred. It is just a coincidence, Taewoo said. But he felt uneasy. That afternoon, Commander Hyunjin called a meeting. The room was full of station officials and security personnel. Everyone looked nervous. Matriarch Shar arrives tomorrow, the commander said. Her ship is ahead of schedule. We need to discuss how to handle this situation. A security officer spoke up. We should separate the cubs from the human before the matriarch sees them together. We tried that yesterday, another officer said. The cubs went crazy. They nearly tore through the door, and they stopped eating again. Everyone looked at Tae-woo. He sat quietly in his chair, uncomfortable with the attention. What do you think will happen when the matriarch arrives? Commander Hyun-jin asked him directly. Tae-woo thought about it. She will want to see her children. If they are healthy and happy, maybe she will not be angry. And if she is angry anyway, the commander pressed. Then I will cook her dinner too, Tae-woo said simply. The room went silent. Then someone laughed. Soon others joined in, though the laughter sounded nervous. Ji-won was not laughing. He might be right. If the Flamebringer legends are true, offering fire and food is a sacred ritual to them. It might be the only thing that saves him. That night, Tae-woo could not sleep. He sat with the cubs in their room, watching them breathe. They slept in a pile, all tangled together, peaceful and safe. The golden-eyed cub woke up and crawled over to him. It made a soft sound, almost like it was asking a question. I do not know what will happen tomorrow, Tae-woo whispered to the cub, but I will not let anyone hurt you. The cub tilted its head. Then it spoke. Tae-woo, it said clearly. Tae-woo froze. The cub had just said his name. In Korean. Yes, he managed to say. I am Tae-woo. The cub touched his hand with one small paw. Tae-woo safe, fire safe. The other two cubs woke up. The silver-marked female came over and pressed against his side. The male cub joined them. They surrounded him like a living blanket of fur and warmth. Tae-woo felt tears in his eyes. He had lost his family years ago in the war on Earth. His wife and daughter. He thought he would always be alone after that. But here were 3 alien children who had adopted him as their own. I will keep you safe, he promised them. No matter what. The cubs purred together, a sound like distant thunder. Morning came too quickly. Tae-woo cooked breakfast as always. The cubs ate well, but they seemed restless. They kept looking at the door and whining softly. They know, Ji-won said. She had arrived early, carrying equipment to record whatever happened. They can sense their mothership approaching. Commander Hyun-jin entered with security officers behind her. They all wore armor, just in case. The Vrelnari ship has docked, she said. Matriarch Shar is coming aboard. She refused to meet in a conference room. She demands to see her cubs immediately. Tae-woo stood up slowly. Then we should not make her wait. They walked through the station corridors. The cubs stayed close to Tae-woo, occasionally bumping against his legs. Station personnel watched from doorways, scared and curious. The docking bay doors opened. Tae-woo's first thought was that Matriarch Shar was huge. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in dark fur marked with old scars. Her claws were as long as knives. Her eyes were the same violet as her cubs, but harder. Colder. Behind her stood 6 other Vrelnari warriors, all fully armed. The cubs made excited chirping sounds. They wanted to run to their mother, but they stayed beside Tae-woo. Matriarch Shar looked at her cubs, then at Tae-woo, then back at her cubs pressed against the human's legs. Her growl shook the air. What has been done to my children? Her voice was deep and harsh, speaking through a translator device. Why do they cling to this prey creature? The silver-marked cub stepped forward. She made a series of clicks and growls, speaking in her own language to her mother. Matriarch Shar listened. Her expression did not change, but her claws flexed. The other warriors shifted, ready to attack. Tae-woo knew he had seconds to act. He reached into his bag and pulled out his camping stove. Everyone tensed, but Tae-woo just set it on the floor between himself and the matriarch. He lit the flame, blue and steady. Then he pulled out a piece of meat and began to cook. The docking bay filled with the smell of cooking. Matriarch Shar went completely still. Her ears flicked forward. The other Vrelnari warriors stared at the flame with wide eyes. An old Vrelnari stepped forward from behind the warriors. He was smaller than the others, walking with a limp. One eye was missing, but something about him demanded respect. He spoke in a trembling voice. The Flamebringer, the ancient texts spoke true. Taewoo finished cooking the meat. He cut it carefully into pieces. He ate one piece himself, just as he always did with the cubs. Then he offered another piece toward Matriarch Shar. Not as tribute, not as submission, but as an invitation to share a meal. The cubs chirped excitedly. They ran to their mother, then back to Taewoo, then to their mother again, trying to bring them together. Matriarch Shar looked at the offered meat, at the flame, at her cubs who were so obviously happy and healthy, at the human who sat calmly before her, showing no fear. Slowly, she lowered herself to the ground. She sat across the flame from Taewoo. The entire station held its breath. Matriarch Shar reached out with one massive paw and took the offered meat. She brought it to her mouth. She ate. The old Vrelnari made a sound like a sob. The warriors lowered their weapons. The cubs climbed onto their mother, purring and chirping. But they also reached for Taewoo, wanting him to join the reunion. Matriarch Shar looked at Taewoo for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice softer than before. You have fed my children, kept them safe, given them fire. She touched her chest in what might have been a salute. By ancient law, you are family now. Taewoo did not know what to say, so he just cooked more meat and shared it with everyone around the flame, and for the first time in recorded history, Vrelnari and humans sat together in peace, eating food prepared by fire, just as the ancient legends promised. 2 weeks passed after Matriarch Shar accepted the shared meal. The station had changed. Vrelnari warriors now walked the corridors alongside human crew members. It was strange at first, scary for some, but no violence happened. The old Vrelnari who had recognized Taewoo as a flamebringer was named Elder Thorn. He spent hours each day with Jiwon, translating ancient texts and explaining Vrelnari history. The prophecy was real. Humans had somehow been part of Vrelnari culture for thousands of years, even though that made no sense. Taewoo still cooked for the cubs every day, but now other Vrelnari came to watch. They sat at a respectful distance, staring at the fire with fascination and old fear. Some of them had never seen cooking before. Their technology used different methods to prepare food, but fire was different. Fire was sacred. One morning, a young Vrelnari warrior approached Taewoo while he was cooking breakfast. The warrior was nervous, claws clicking against the floor. Can I learn? The warrior asked through his translator. Can you teach me to use the flame? Taewoo looked at the warrior's four-fingered hands. The long claws. It would be difficult, but maybe not impossible. Of course, Taewoo said. Sit beside me. That afternoon, 5 Vrelnari sat around Taewoo's cooking area, learning how to control heat, how to turn meat without burning it. They were clumsy at first. One of them singed his fur. Another dropped meat into the flame. But they kept trying. The cubs helped, chirping encouragement and demonstrating what Taewoo had taught them. The silver-marked female, who the Vrelnari called Kira, had become quite good at judging when meat was properly cooked. The male called Rin was patient and careful. The small golden-eyed one, named Vel, was the best at temperature control. More Vrelnari came each day. Then something unexpected happened. Other species started coming too. Ambassador Quix was a Zephian, an insect-like species that normally avoided both fire and predators. But Quix was curious. The ambassador watched from far away at first, then slowly moved closer over several days. Finally, Quix approached during a cooking session. The ambassador's translator made clicking sounds. I have never understood the human custom of burning food, Quix said. My species filters nutrients from liquid, but I wish to understand why this matters so much. Taewoo smiled. Sit with us. You do not have to eat. Just sit, Quix hesitated. A Vrelnari warrior was sitting just a meter away. The Zephians and Vrelnari had been enemies for centuries, but the warrior looked up and made a gesture that meant welcome in Vrelnari culture. Quix sat down. The fire reflected off the ambassador's compound eyes. Several Vrelnari offered Quix pieces of cooked meat. Quix could not eat it, of course, but the gesture was understood. This is strange. Quick said quietly. We should be enemies. But sitting here by the flame, I do not feel fear. I feel peaceful. That is what fire does, Elder Thorn said. He had been watching from his usual spot. Fire brings people together. It has done so since the beginning of time. This is why the flame bringers are sacred to us. They remind us that we are all the same in the light and warmth of the flame. Commander Hyunjin started attending the cooking sessions too. She never said much, but she watched everything. Taewoo knew she was trying to understand what was happening on her station. This strange peace that had formed around a camping stove. 3 weeks after Matriarch Shar arrived, disaster almost struck. A ship arrived carrying refugees from another war zone. Among them were Kryn warriors, a species that had fought the Vrelnari for generations. When they learned there were Vrelnari on the station, they demanded the predators be removed or they would leave. A meeting was called. Tensions ran high. The Kryn leader, a grizzled soldier named Borak, refused to even be in the same room as Matriarch Shar. Commander Hyunjin tried to mediate. Ji-won tried to explain the Flamebringer prophecy. Nothing worked. The Kryn were leaving, and with them went any hope of this peace spreading further. Taewoo had stayed quiet during the meeting. But now he stood up. I will cook dinner for everyone, he said. Here now, people stared at him. Borak laughed bitterly. You think food will solve this? My people have died to Vrelnari claws, and my people have died to Kryn weapons, Matriarch Shar said coldly. Taewoo went to his locker and got his camping stove. He set it up right there in the meeting room. He lit the flame. The cubs came running when they smelled the cooking. They always knew when Taewoo was preparing food. They pushed into the tense meeting room and sat beside him purring. Borak stared at the cubs. At how they pressed against the human cook. At how relaxed they seemed. Those are Vrelnari cubs, Borak said slowly. I have never seen them sit peacefully with anyone. They were scared and hungry, Taewoo said, turning the meat in his pan. Now they are not. That is all. Vel, the small golden-eyed cub, looked at Borak. The cub tilted its head, then chirped softly. It picked up a piece of cooked meat in its small paws and walked over to the Kryn leader. The cub offered the meat to Borak. The room held its breath. Borak looked down at the small Vrelnari holding out food to him, an offering of peace from a child who did not understand centuries of hatred. Borak's hands shook as he reached down. He took the meat. He ate it. Vel chirped happily and scrambled back to Taewoo. Mission accomplished. Taewoo cooked more meat. He cooked enough for everyone in the room. Kryn and Vrelnari, humans and Zephians, anyone who wanted to eat. One by one, people sat down around the flame. They did not speak at first. They just ate. Enemies sharing a meal cooked by a human who treated everyone the same. Elder Thorn spoke into the silence. The prophecy said the Flamebringers would return when we needed them most. When children cried in darkness. He gestured to the cubs. These children were crying, and this human brought his flame. Now look at us, old enemies sitting together in peace, even if just for this moment. Borak set down his eating utensils. He looked at Matriarch Shar across the fire. I will not forget what has happened between our people, Borak said. But perhaps we can stop making new sorrows. For the sake of our children. Matriarch Shar nodded slowly. For the sake of our children, it was not forgiveness, not yet. But it was a beginning. After everyone left, Commander Hyunjin stayed behind. She sat down next to Taewoo as he cleaned his cooking equipment. You did something impossible today, she said. I just cooked dinner, Taewoo replied. The commander shook her head. You gave them a reason to try. That is more than 1,000 peace treaties have accomplished. Taewoo looked at the cubs sleeping in a pile nearby. Kira had one paw over Rin. Vel was curled against both of them. I just wanted them to stop being hungry, he said quietly. Everything else just happened. Sometimes that is enough, Commander Hyunjin said. Sometimes feeding the hungry is exactly what the galaxy needs. That night, Taewoo received a message on his datapad. It was from Elder Thorn. The message contained plans for a large gathering space, a place with many cooking stations, enough room for hundreds of beings to sit together around flames. The text below the plans read, The First Festival of Flamebringers. Will you help us build it? Taewoo looked at his small camping stove, then at the cubs, then at the vast universe beyond the station walls, full of species who might also be hungry, who might also need a warm fire and a shared meal. He typed one word in response. Yes. Station contributed. Frelnary warriors hauled heavy materials. Human engineers designed the cooking stations. Zephian artists created beautiful murals on the walls showing flames and different species sitting together. Even the Kryn helped, welding metal beams with their natural ability to generate intense heat. The cubs grew during this time. They were no longer small. Kira now stood as tall as Taewoo's chest. Rin was bigger than his sister, with powerful shoulders and a deep voice. Vel remained the smallest but had become incredibly intelligent, learning 5 different languages. But they still refused to eat unless Taewoo sat with them. Every meal. Every day Taewoo was exhausted. He now cooked for dozens of people each day. Other humans had joined him, learning his methods. But it was not the same. The cubs wanted him specifically. The other Vrelnari wanted him specifically. He could not say no to hungry people. One evening, Taewoo collapsed in the kitchen. He just stopped moving. Sitting down hard on the floor, his hands shaking, Jiwon found him there. She called for Dr. Yoon, the station medical officer. Exhaustion, Dr. Yoon said after examining Taewoo. You are working 18 hours a day. You need rest, but people need to eat, Taewoo protested weakly. And you need to sleep, Dr. Yoon said firmly. No more cooking today. Doctor's orders. The cubs sensed something was wrong. They came into the medical bay, pushing past security. When they saw Taewoo lying on the bed, they made distress sounds. Kira pressed her face against his hand. Rin paced back and forth, agitated. Vel climbed onto the bed and curled up next to Taewoo protectively. Taewoo tired, Vel said softly. We protect now. He sleep. Matriarch Shar arrived minutes later. She looked at her cubs guarding the exhausted human. She looked at the medical readings showing how much Taewoo had pushed himself. He has given too much, she said quietly. We have taken from him without giving back. What do we do? Jiwon asked. Matriarch Shar touched Kira's head gently. We care for him as he cared for our children. She turned to Elder Thorn, who had followed her. Call a gathering. All species. Everyone who has eaten food prepared by the Flamebringer must attend. 2 hours later, the incomplete festival hall was packed. Frelnari, humans, Zephians, Kryn, and a dozen other species crowded together. Everyone looked worried. Matriarch Shar stood before them all. The Flamebringer has given us a great gift, she announced. He brought peace where there was hatred. He fed us when we were hungry. But we have been greedy. We took and took without considering the cost to him. Murmurs of shame rippled through the crowd. Now he is sick from exhaustion. Matriarch Shar continued. My cubs will not eat. They sit guard over him instead. This is not the way. We must learn to carry our own flames. We must cook our own meals. The Flamebringer showed us how. Now we must practice what he taught. But we cannot cook like humans do, a Kryn said. Our hands are different. Then we adapt, Commander Hyunjin said, stepping forward. We design tools that work for each species. We teach each other. That is what Taewoo would want. A human engineer named Sung Ho raised his hand. I have been working with the Vrelnari warriors. We created gloves that let them handle cooking tools despite their claws. It works. They can cook now. I have designed heat-resistant holders for Zephian limbs, Ambassador Quicks added. My people can manage flames with proper equipment. Elder Thorn stepped forward. The prophecy never said the Flamebringers would do everything for us. It said they would share their flame. Share, that means we must learn. We must participate. We must carry fire forward ourselves. The crowd began organizing immediately, species working together to design cooking tools for different body types, sharing recipes, planning rotation schedules so no one person had to cook all the time. 3 days later, Taewoo woke up. He had slept for almost 40 hours. The cubs were still there, taking turns watching over him. When his eyes opened, all 3 of them made happy chirping sounds. Taewoo okay now? Fel asked. I am okay, Taewoo said, his voice rough. He tried to sit up. His body still ached. Are you hungry? I should cook for you. No, Kira said firmly. She had learned more human words. Others cook now. You rest, Rin gently pushed Taewoo back down onto the bed. Cubs protect. Like you protected us. Jiwon entered carrying a tray of food. Taewoo stared at it. It was cooked meat prepared well with vegetables on the side. Who made this? He asked. We all did, Jiwon said with a smile. 20 different people helped. Relnari cut the meat. Humans seasoned it. A Zephian managed the flame temperature. A Kryn designed the serving tray. It is a community meal. For you, Taewoo felt tears in his eyes. He was so used to being the one who fed others. He had forgotten what it felt like to be cared for. The cubs ate with him, sharing the meal. It tasted different from his cooking, but it was good, made with care and friendship. Over the next week, Tae-woo recovered his strength. He visited the festival hall and saw dozens of cooking stations being used simultaneously. Vrelnari teaching humans their traditional meat preparation, humans teaching Kryn about seasoning, Zephians learning to appreciate the art of cooking even though they could not eat the results. Elder Thorn found him watching from a balcony. This is what the prophecy truly meant, the old Vrelnari said. Not that one being would carry the flame alone, but that one being would teach us all to carry flames together. I am just a cook, Tae-woo said. No, Elder Thorn said gently. You are a bridge. You connected species that thought they could never connect. You showed us that sitting together around a flame is more powerful than any weapon. The cubs joined them on the balcony. They were almost fully grown now. In a few months they would be adults by Vrelnari standards. Will you leave when you are grown? Tae-woo asked them. Go with your mother back to Vrelnari space? Vel tilted her head. Tae-woo is family. We stay with family. Mother says we can choose, Kira added. We choose here. We choose the flame. Rin pressed against Tae-woo's side like he had done when small. We teach others, like you taught us. Share the flame. Matriarch Shar appeared behind them. She had been listening. She touched Tae-woo's shoulder with one massive paw. You have given my children something I could not, she said. You gave them hope, peace. A future where they do not have to be warriors if they do not wish to. For that you will always have my protection and my respect. Below them, the festival hall filled with beings from a dozen species, all preparing meals together. The sound of laughter and conversation mixed with the crackle of flames and the sizzle of cooking food. It was chaos. It was beautiful. It was exactly what Tae-woo had dreamed of without knowing he was dreaming. The grand festival was scheduled for next week. Representatives from across the galaxy were coming. Some to observe, some to participate, some still skeptical that this peace could be real. But standing here with 3 Vrelnari cubs pressed against him, watching former enemies cook together, Tae-woo believed. He believed that a simple flame and a shared meal could change everything, because he had seen it happen. The day of the grand festival arrived. Ships from 20 star systems docked at Aurora 7. The station had never been so crowded. Security was on high alert. Many of the visiting species had never met peacefully before. The festival hall gleamed. 500 cooking stations arranged in a massive circle around a central flame that burned in a ceremonial brazier. Each station was designed for different species to use comfortably. The walls showed murals of beings from across the galaxy sitting together, sharing meals. Tae-woo stood at the entrance, nervous. He wore clean clothes that Ji-won had insisted he buy. His camping stove hung from his belt in a special holder that Sung-ho had made for him. The cubs stood with him. They wore ceremonial sashes that marked them as honored members of the Vrelnari clans, but they stayed close to Tae-woo as they always did. What if this does not work? Tae-woo asked Ji-won quietly. What if they fight instead of eating? Ji-won squeezed his arm. Then we will have tried. That is all anyone can ask. The delegates began arriving. First came the Vrelnari, led by Matriarch Shar. Then the Kryn with Borak at their head. Zephians floated in on gossamer wings. Humans from Earth and the colonies. Species that Tae-woo had never seen before, curious about this festival of flame-bringers. Some looked excited. Many looked suspicious. A few looked openly hostile. A group of Vrelnari traditionalists entered last. They had opposed the festival from the beginning. Their leader, a scarred warrior named Grath, pointed at Tae-woo. This is a mockery, Grath announced loudly. Humans are not flame-bringers. They are weak prey creatures. This prophecy is being twisted for political games. The hall went silent. All eyes turned to the confrontation. Matriarch Shar stepped forward. Her voice was ice. You challenge the prophecy. Do you also challenge my authority? I have accepted this human as kin. My cubs have chosen him as family. Grath bared his teeth. Cubs can be fooled. This human has used tricks to manipulate them. The cubs moved in front of Tae-woo protectively. Kira growled deep in her chest. Rin's claws extended. Vel spoke clearly so everyone could hear. No tricks. Tae-woo fed us when we were starving, sat with us when we were alone, shared his flame when we had only darkness. He is family. You insult him, you insult us. Grath looked at the cubs, surprise showing on his face. He had not expected them to defend the humans so fiercely. Elder Thorn walked into the center of the hall, leaning on his walking stick. The old Vrelnari commanded respect even from traditionalists. You speak of tricks, Grath, but I have studied the old texts my entire life. Everything the prophecy said would happen has happened. The Flamebringer came when children cried in darkness. He shared his fire. He brought peace to old enemies. If this is not the fulfillment of prophecy, then prophecy has no meaning. Words prove nothing, Grath said stubbornly. Let this human prove himself. Let him cook for us all if he is truly what you claim. Tewu took a deep breath. He walked to the central brazier and lit his small camping stove from the ceremonial flame. The blue fire flickered to life. I am not a flame bringer, Tewu said clearly. Everyone leaned forward to hear. I am just a cook. I do not have special powers. I cannot solve all your problems. All I can do is prepare food with care and share it with those who are hungry. He pulled out ingredients and began cooking. His hands moved with practiced skill, cutting and seasoning. The prophecy calls for someone to share their flame. Tewu continued as he cooked. But a flame that is kept to yourself gives no warmth. It must be shared, not just by one person but by everyone. Each of us must carry our own light. Each of us must feed those who hunger. He finished preparing the first portion and held it out toward Grath. I offer you this meal, not because you believe in me, but because you are here. You are part of this community, whether you want to be or not. And in a community, we feed each other. Grath stared at the offered food, at Tewu's calm face, at the cubs standing ready to defend their chosen family, at the hundreds of beings watching this moment. Slowly, Grath reached out. He took the food. He ate. The tension broke like a wave. Beings rushed to the cooking stations. Species that had never cooperated before worked side by side, preparing meals. The hall filled with the sounds of cooking, laughter, conversation. Ambassador Quix helped a Kryn warrior manage a tricky sauce. A human engineer taught Vrelnari cubs how to flip food without burning it. Grath grudgingly ended up teaching a group of humans about traditional Vrelnari hunting preparations. Tewu moved from station to station, offering advice, sharing techniques, but mostly just watching. This was what he had hoped for. People caring for each other through the simple act of preparing food. Elder Thorn found him near sunset. The festival had been going for hours. Nobody wanted to leave. You said you are not a flamebringer, the old Vrelnari said. But look at what you have created. This peace, this joy. What else would you call it? Tewu watched the cubs teaching younger beings how to cook. They were so patient, so careful, so different from the starving, scared children he had first met. I would call it what it is, Tewu said. People taking care of each other. Nothing more. Nothing less, Elder Thorn laughed. Sometimes the simplest truths are the most profound. That night after the festival ended, Tewu sat in the empty hall with the cubs. They were tired but happy. Kira's fur smelled like smoke and spices. Rin had a small burn on one paw from being careless with a hot pan. Vel was already planning improvements for next time. Commander Hyun-jin entered with a datapad. She looked amazed. 17 species have asked permission to establish permanent cooking exchanges on their home worlds, she said, based on what happened here today. 5 peace treaties are being negotiated, all because people cook together. Tewu smiled tiredly. Good, that is very good. Jiwon sat down beside him. You did it. You actually changed the galaxy. We did it, Tewu corrected. All of us. I just lit the first flame. 6 months later, festival halls operated on 40 different worlds. The tradition of shared cooking spread across species and cultures. Wars did not end overnight. Old hatreds did not disappear. But there were new spaces where enemies could meet as fellow beings around a fire. The cubs had grown into strong young adults. They chose to stay on Aurora 7, teaching others what Tewu had taught them. Kira became known for her patience with frightened children from any species. Rin developed new cooking techniques that worked for beings with different body types. Vel wrote the first comprehensive guide to cross-species culinary traditions. Tewu still cooked every day, but now he was one of many. The burden was shared. The flame was shared. One evening, a young human girl came to him in the festival hall. She looked nervous. Are you the flame bringer? She asked. Tewu knelt down to her level. I am just someone who cooks. Do you want to learn? The girl nodded eagerly. My friend is Vrelnari. I want to cook for her, to show her we can be friends. Taewoo smiled and led her to a cooking station. Vel joined them, offering to translate and help. Together, the human girl and the Vrel Nari cub prepared a simple meal. Watching them work, Taewoo felt something settle in his chest. A peace he had not felt since losing his own family so long ago. He had not brought back his wife and daughter. That pain would always be there, but he had found a new family. Not just 3 Vrel Nari cubs, but hundreds of beings across dozens of species who had learned to care for each other. The prophecy said the flame bringers would return when children cried in darkness. But Taewoo finally understood the truth. The flame bringers were not a special group. They were anyone who chose to light a fire and share it. Anyone who fed the hungry. Anyone who sat with those who were alone. Everyone could be a flame bringer. They just had to choose to be. That night, Taewoo sat with his 3 cubs, now adults but still his family, around a small camping stove. The same one he had used that first night in the cargo bay. The blue flame flickered between them, warm and steady. "Thank you," Kira said softly. "For saving us." Taewoo shook his head. "You saved me too. I was alone. I had forgotten what it meant to have family." "You reminded me. We are family," Rin agreed. "Always." Vel leaned against Taewoo, purring. "Forever family. Flame family." They sat together as the station lights dimmed to night cycle. Outside, the galaxy continued its ancient dance of conflict and cooperation. But here, in this small circle of firelight, there was only peace. And that was enough. It had always been enough. The predator cubs had refused to eat until the human sat beside them and shared his flame. And in that simple act of kindness, they had all found something more precious than prophecy. They had found home.